Hosts of a brand new podcast available now over at Energeticcity.ca. It's called Secrets of the North, and Emily Gallen's one host. Good morning, Emily.
Good morning, Dom.
And walking in from the newsroom once again, Spencer Hall, the other host of the podcast. Good morning, Spencer.
Thank you. I almost didn't make it in.
I'm grateful you did. If you happen to be watching the video online, you've got some merch already even that say Secrets of the North, so that's wonderful. I love that you dressed up for this.
Absolutely.
So I wonder we'd start with you, Emily, a bit. Tell us a bit about where this podcast came from. What kind of got you to a point where you wanted to start a podcast that seemed to deal with kind of true crime in northern BC?
So I've been wanting to do this podcast for a couple years now, and it wasn't until I met this beautiful Spencer over here many moons over a campfire ago, and we just hit it off and started talking about true crime together, and you just moved to town, I think.
Yeah, I think it was shortly about a year ago, I think.
Yeah, basically, first thing we started talking about was true crime. I'm like, okay, we can hang out. This is going to work. And
I passed the vibe check.
Yeah, you passed the vibe check. And I've just studied some criminology and forensics in university. Always been listening to podcasts. I like to read textbooks on forensics, kind of into that stuff. And there's a couple cases in particular I really wanted to do, but then we kind of just fell into this together and decided we wanted to do a podcast. And I mean, it took me years, but now we're doing it.
It's here.
So you'd say kind of both of you kind of came at this and met and started talking about it. You've already mentioned this, the cases you wanted to cover. You were like, these are things that haven't been covered before in many of the true crime podcasts that I listen to, I suppose, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a few in particular that, I mean, could be real deep dives and couldn't be covered really in one episode.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'd love it if we got into those eventually. But when I started doing some research into the 30s and 40s and 50s, there's some pretty crazy cases that I had never even heard about.
Wow. You're kind of from here, if I remember right, Emily.
Yes, yeah, born and raised.
You're not from here, Spencer, but was this
I'm not.
you had already kind of known that there was some cases that might be interesting that you'd want to talk about, that it'd be neat if someone covered it a podcast, and you were like, well, why not us?
Pretty much. I mean, again, with Northeast BC, you don't get a lot of. There are some Canadian true crime podcasts, Dark Poutine is one, but I don't think that they really focus on northeastern BC. And Emily came to me and was like, "There's so many cases that we could cover," and because oftentimes there are family members that are still around, we can always talk to them as well. So yeah, it made sense to launch this podcast.
All right. Well, why don't we talk about the first episode, which I believe dropped yesterday. Can you tell us a bit about what the case, kind of the thing is you cover in that one, Emily?
Yeah, without giving away too many, spoilers. It happened back in 1948, and it's a case that happens along the Alaska Highway. And it actually is a part of a real bigger story about the war on comics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of like meddling comics and crime together, called the Dawson Creek Comic Book Killer.
Yeah, to
Very
be clear,
cool.
It's comic books. We don't have any. They had nothing against stand-up comedians.
Yes, yeah.
Fair enough. And then other episodes, because you guys are already working ahead and kind of what you're going to do next, Spencer. I mean, what kind of, again, without giving too much away, kind of cases you guys are hoping to cover as well in the coming episodes?
So, I know that, as Emily touched, the Comic Book Killers is kind of part of a bigger thing called, the war on comic books.
Yeah.
But this the next episode, to give a little teaser, is actually part of a bigger thing called the Mr. Big sting operation. It's a type of sting that police use fairly frequently. So that one takes place in Chetwynd. So it took place in Chetwynd. So that'll be the next episode, and then we have a few more. But Emily does, frankly, most of the research, and then I just Google stuff as things go on.
While the mics are on.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. As I understand it, this is an episode that's going to be kind of bi-monthly, every 2 weeks, a new or an episode, a podcast that'll drop every couple weeks, I suppose, a new episode.
They drop when they drop.
Fair enough.
Usually, yeah, I think we're aiming for two a month.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. All right, and as I said, the first episode out now at Energeticcity.ca/podcast. You guys also you're on social media, so tell us a bit about that if you want, Emily, where we could find you.
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram at secretsofthenorth_podcast. We are pretty, titillated, I'd say, that we got so many followers, and it really means a lot that people are supporting it. And, we're going to roll out our kinks and get it better as we go on. But it's so nice at the beginning that people are already like, hey, you guys are cool, we'll listen.
I think last time we checked, we had 321, which is about
Yeah.
300 more than I expected. So
Yeah, I think we have more followers on this than I do on my own personal account.
Oh,
probably.
easily for mine, yeah.
Well,
Except
there
for
you
your
go.
grandma.
Well, my grandma's my number one fan.
Yeah.
All right, so Secrets of the North podcast, first episode out now. Again, Energeticcity.ca /podcast. You can also subscribe to it anywhere else you happen to find your podcasts. I was listening to it on Spotify this morning. Both of you, thanks for coming here, and I can't wait to hear more.
Thanks, Deb.
Thanks so much.